In this video, I'm going to show you how to interpret some of those expenditure and revenue charts. So the link I gave you brings you to this page, and you can click on your two districts that you're looking at. And so for the purposes of this demonstration, I did Austin ISD, and then I did Fort Worth ISD. I'm going to click Submit. Takes a little bit to generate those reports because they are kind of lengthy. So first off, it's going to give you a lot of reports, and you may not necessarily need every report that's here. It's going to tell you the overall revenue, which is just kind of interesting. I'll touch on that to see how you interpret that. And then the expenditures, and that's on operational, which explains down here what that means. But then probably what y'all want to look at is program expenditures, because we're looking at how it's spent in different programs. And then it gets into a lot of other information that you probably won't need. So I'm going to stick to these first couple of charts. So one of the things I'm asking you to do is to compare funding. This first part gives you some really interesting information about where the revenue stream is coming from. So here we have Austin, here we have Frisco ISD. So this blue part here is federal income or federal taxes. And so you'll notice that Frisco has very little of their overall revenue source as federal government. And then the pink is local tax, and then the green is other local tax, and then the brown is state tax. So what's interesting about all of this is you can kind of see proportionately where those revenue streams are coming from. And you can see even here with Frisco over time that it's becoming more and more local sources of revenue than it is state or federal revenue. And you can see that Austin also has a lot of local revenue that's making up that, which means that it's your property taxes that are primarily paying for education and not state government dollars or federal dollars. And so over time, as I've mentioned in previous modules, we've seen that shift happen more and more and more, shifted to local dollars versus state dollars. So that's kind of interesting. You can make some comparisons based on where those revenue streams are coming from. So here we get into expenditures, and expenditures are broken down into these various operational costs. So counseling and health, other general administration, plant maintenance and operation, instruction, school leadership, instructional leadership, transportation. So what we can look at is specifically with instruction, school leadership, and instructional leadership, because all of these categories directly make up what's happening in the classroom. So principals, teachers, instructional materials, curriculum, all of that goes right here in this light blue, dark blue, and tan area. And so once again, we can see, well, first off, Frisco is spending a lot less on students than Austin ISD. Austin ISD, in fact, has some of the highest per pupil spending that we see across the state. So we see that Frisco is spending around $8,000, where Austin is spending around $10,000 per student. And then you can come again and kind of eyeball and see where these expenditures are happening. So if we were to lay this over here, we'd probably see pretty similar spending based on instructional costs. We can't go necessarily one for one because these purple areas are a little higher, so it's pushing our charts up there. But maybe similar costs in instruction. But you can notice, like in these pink areas, transportation costs are a little higher in Austin ISD. It also looks like in this green area in plant maintenance and operation, it's a little higher cost, and all that kind of makes sense because they're a huge district. In instructional leadership and staff development, we can see that Frisco is spending a lot less on that than Austin ISD. And again, we could say, well, Austin has a lot more teachers, and that's true, but we're still talking about per student. So per student, they're still spending more on those things than per student in Frisco ISD. When we specifically get down here to program, specific program instruction, we see it broken down to accelerated education, which is like tutoring or summer school, other athletics, regular education, which is the everyday regular classroom, bilingual, students with disabilities, career and tech. So you can see those are nice comparisons to make too, to see where is the majority of that spending coming from, or not coming from, but going to. And so athletics, that's an interesting look there. It looks like slightly higher. Bilingual students, we see higher here in Austin ISD than in Frisco ISD. Students with disabilities, we see a little bit higher spending there as well. So that's how you interpret those two spending charts. And again, you're looking at big picture. I'm not expecting you to, take your magnifying glass and try to compare this chart to this chart, but taking an eyeball look at it, are you seeing glaring differences in how they're either bringing in revenue or spending that money?